Can you tell me where my country lies? Said the unicorn to his true love's eyes. It lies with me, cried the Queen of Maybe. For her merchandise he traded in his prize.
Hello vinyl community, how you doing? It's Bill with the Vinyl-verse. This is my 45th anniversary video for Selling England by the Pound by Genesis. October 13th, 1973, this album was released in the UK. It's the 5th studio album by Genesis. It's one of my absolute favorite albums, not only by Genesis, but by any musical group or artist. I really just love this album so much. So 45 years ago, on October 13th, this album came out. What can I say about it? So on this album, the lineup of Genesis are Peter Gabriel on vocals, flute, oboe, and percussion. Tony Banks on 12-string guitar and keyboards. Mike Rutherford on 12-string guitar, bass guitar, and the electric sitar. Steve Hackett on both electric guitar and acoustic guitar. And then, of course, Phil Collins on drums. And he also does backup vocals, and he does take lead vocal on one song on this album. Yeah, this is just a terrific album. The cover art is a painting by a woman named Betty Swanwick, and her painting was named The Dream. I guess the band really liked the photo, and it kind of fit the mood of the album. And one of the songs, the second song, is called I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, and it has a lawnmower in it, and so they asked her to paint in a lawnmower here. So this is her original painting, The Dream, with the lawnmower. So I found a review online from AllMusic that I'd like to read a little bit of that review here. I've edited it down so it's not too long, but it's by Stephen Thomas Erlewine, and he says Genesis proved that they could rock on Foxtrot, but on its follow-up, Selling England by the Pound, they didn't follow this route. They returned to the English eccentricity of their first records, which wasn't so much a retreat as a consolidation of powers. This, combined with many overt literary allusions, give this album a storybook quality. It plays as a collection of short stories, fables, and fairy tales, and it is also a rock record, which naturally makes it quite extraordinary as a collection, but also as a set of individual songs. Genesis has never been as direct as they've been on the fanciful yet hook-driven I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe. Apart from the fluttering flutes in the fade-out, it could easily be mistaken for a glam single, or as achingly fragile as on More Fool Me, sung by Phil Collins. It's this delicate balance in how the album showcases the band's narrative force on a small scale as well as large that makes this their arguable high watermark. So I thought that review kind of said everything I wanted to say about this album, but I wouldn't know how to put into words. So so in retrospect, the band, some of the members, I think Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks, they don't look back on this album too fondly. They are always quoted as saying that there's a lot of high marks on it, but I guess there's stuff that they wish they did differently. Now, Steve Hackett has been on record to say that this is his favorite Genesis album. And he shines on this album. He has a lot of good or great guitar licks or movements maybe on this album, especially the song Firth of Fifth. He does this outstanding, very atmospheric guitar solo that really, really just it's really emotional. It's hard to describe, but it really, at least for me, really affects me. It makes me feel like I really feel the guitar. I don't know how to put it. He also gets some sounds out of his guitars on this album that are truly unique, and I don't know how he sustains the notes like he does, moving from note to note, but just sustaining it, and it almost doesn't sound like a guitar, but it clearly is a guitar. Tony Banks on this album, a lot of great moments from him, both writing and playing. The Mellotron use on this album is just fantastic. He really uses the Mellotron great on some songs on this album. Again, the song Firth of Fifth, he does this intro to that song, real like classical feel piano piece that intros the song and then is later echoed by the band in it. Mike Rutherford's playing on this album is just great. He is a very unique bass player, but his 12-string guitar playing in a lot of the songs is really the glue that holds everything together. It's almost like you don't realize that it's there, but it's there, and it's integral to the pieces of music. And Phil Collins, at this point in his career with Genesis, he was really starting to work on really complex time signatures and making things more complex and challenging, and you can definitely hear that on this album. And then he sings the song More Fool Me, which is a really quiet and sweet song, acoustic song that it's just a nice moment on this album. I think a lot of people kind of pan that song, but to me, I really like it, and I think it fits well on this album. And then, of course, Peter Gabriel, from the opening a cappella intro to the first song on this album, Dancing with the Moonlit Night. He really sets the tone for that song and for the album. His singing is excellent on this album, I think. And of course, he has a lot of flute moments on this album too. And in the cinema show, you can clearly hear the oboe come through. You don't really think of oboe or flute all that much in like a rock context, but he added that, and it works really well. So the track list, I've mentioned most of the songs. Dancing with the Moonlit Night, one of my favorite songs on this album. Like I said, it opens with Peter Gabriel singing a cappella. Really great song. It's got a lot of going from I guess soft acoustic to a little more edgier and rockish. Great. Then the next is I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, and this was I guess you could say a minor hit for them. Really their first hit as a band, I guess. That became a live staple for them. Pretty much played in every single concert throughout the years. Then the next song, Firth of Fifth, I already mentioned. Introduction by Tony Banks on the piano. He actually stopped performing it live because it was too complicated, and he didn't want to mess it up when he played it, so they would just go right into the song and skip that. Although there were times that he did play it, and of course it's got that beautiful, awesome, atmospheric, ethereal guitar solo by Steve Hackett. Just beautiful. It's kind of the solo actually kind of mimics earlier passages from the flute and from the keyboards, and then he just takes it to a whole new level. Fantastic. Firth of Fifth is right up there with my favorite Genesis songs. It's probably number 2, right after Supper's Ready. The song More Fool Me, which I already mentioned, sung by Phil. Then we go to side 2 and the Battle of Epping Forest. Very challenging song to listen to, very complicated musically and lyrically to sing. They cram a lot of lyrics into this song. It's the most challenging song on this album to listen to. But it's got a lot of humor in it. It basically tells the story of 2 gangs, 2 British gangs, I guess, and they battle it out in Epping Forest. So lots of little cast of characters mentioned throughout that song. Then you go into an acoustic piece. I shouldn't say acoustic piece, but I guess a slower piece called After the Ordeal. Kind of has a medieval sound to it. Steve Hackett on acoustic guitar, and then later on in the song he kind of brings the electric guitar into it for a movement. And then it goes in. Then the next song on the album is The Cinema Show, which is another classic Genesis song. It's another song that starts quiet acoustically and just builds into this big epic epic song. Later on in the song you get a nice moment between Phil Collins, Tony Banks, and Mike Rutherford. Mike Rutherford really just strumming on the 12 string and Tony Banks playing keyboard solo and Phil just right behind them. keeping it all together, and it's really good groove. That piece of the song became a staple into their live set later on in the years, as part of medleys that they would do. Yeah, the Cinnamon Show, that portion of the song would always show up in a live medley, in the late 70s, 80s. And even when they toured in 2007, they used that piece. And then the album closes out with Isle of Plenty, which is kind of a reprise of the opening song, Dancing with the Moonlit Night. It's got the same melody, and it just kind of harkens back to that intro that Peter Gabriel sings. So all in all, awesome album. Highly recommend it if you're not familiar. It's 45 years old. That's hard to believe. I was 2, I guess, when this came out, or just about to turn 2, I think. So I can't say enough about this album. It's a truly band album. The songs are all credited to the band. Although certain members may have had more input on certain songs. Yeah. So that's it. That's I'm putting a link down below to a YouTube playlist that I found of this album. So if you're at all interested, check it out. I hope you do check it out, and I hope you do find it interesting and like it if you're not familiar. Yeah, so Selling England by the Pound, 45 years old on October 13th. All right, so that's going to do it. Everybody take care. I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.